John. Call the meeting to order at 7:01. Representatives Gardner, Scott, Chase, Ritchie, Norman, and Powers are present. Representative Massett is not here at the moment. If she comes in, that's great. If not, we're gonna do our business tonight here.
She shows up online, I'll let you know.
Yeah, thank you. Tonight's business has to do with the National Opioid Settlement Acceptance and Allocation years 2 and 3. I'd like Representative Chase to read into the record the resolution, please.
Resolution 2021-799-8 National Opioid Settlement Acceptance and Allocation years 2 and 3. Resolution to authorize the years 2 and year 3 opioid settlement payments. Whereas the proliferation of improper use of opioids has created a nationwide epidemic, and whereas the town council has joined into settlement agreements with manufacturers and distributors of opioids, and whereas the National Opioid Settlement Funds are intended to be used in the fight against opioid and other addictions, and whereas Community Speaks Out is a volunteer nonprofit organization focusing on improving the community by providing education, prevention, and resources to individuals and their families to access treatment and recovery. And whereas the town of Groton previously awarded their settlement funds of $22,263.86 received in year 1 to Community Speaks Out. And whereas the town council desires to award opioid settlement funds for the second fiscal year 2023 of $23,398.23, along with the Janssen Manufacturer year 1 fiscal 2022 payment of $89,508.93, and year 3 fiscal year 2024 payments to Community Speaks Out. Now, therefore be it recommended that the town council and the representative town meeting authorizes the fiscal years 2023 and 2024 opioid settlement funds to be awarded to Community Speaks Out. Second.
Just a clarifying question. Is that last item a resolved or recommended? Because I'm seeing resolved on my end.
Resolved.
All right, resolved.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Okay. I have a question on paragraph 6. So
okay.
23,398.23 for 2023. Then January manufacturing year 1 fiscal year 2022, 89,000, and year 3 fiscal year 2024. So is the 89,000 for year 2 and year 3?
So the first thing that came through is as settlements come to fruition, that starts a clock for them paying. The first thing to come through were some distributor funds. So that was the year 1, 22,000. Now this year we got that, and the J&J as a manufacturer is the 89,000. Now the reason that's more is their each settlement's different, so it's hard to predict what's going to happen. J&J front loaded theirs. Now, like the earlier distributors, I think over 18 years, J&J's over 9 years, and they front loaded the first 3 years. We're going to see Walmart come through soon, and Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens should be coming through sometime this year. We just applied for it recently, but we have no idea how they're going to structure it until it comes through.
So is that how you're accounting for and year 3?
Year 3 is for the next, so basically the first amounts, so the 23,000, the 23,000, 89,000 is essentially what we'll call calendar year 23. And then right about the end of this year, we'll get the next year's amount. That'll be the year 3. But we don't know at this point what that'll be.
All right, so there's no figure for year 3.
No, we won't know until then. I don't expect it to be any lower, but we'll probably, depending on how they structure it, I wouldn't be surprised to see another. I don't want to guess. It could be, who knows what it's going to be. If it's like the other ones, though, the other distributors will be spread out longer.
Just won't be low.
Right. And I know I saw Walmart settled for $5 billion, which is what Janssen settled for, but they front loaded theirs. And then they pay almost nothing after the 9 years, or 3 years, and then it goes way down for 6 and then nothing after that. So we'll see how that $5 billion is structured. So every year's gonna be different for what we get.
Any
Thank you.
further questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Representative Scott.
If I could just follow up on what Representative Gardner was asking, and I think we're kind of on the same page here. So are we authorizing in that sixth paragraph a third year payment around 23,000, but we just don't know what that number is? So we're kind of leaving like a blank check at this point.
Year 2 is the 89 plus the 23. It'll be at least that much for year 3, maybe a little more. We just
Is
don't.
that normal
we won't
procedure for us to authorize in advance monies we don't know what the dollar amount is?
Well, it won't be lower. That's just whatever we get. Because I mean, it's no different. We do contracts for years, but this is just passing along a grant. It's got to go to opioid use, so, or addiction usage. So only a couple options.
All right. And then my follow-up question, and I'm glad that Representative Dela Cruz is with us today. Is there a written business plan or document as to how Community Speaks Out will be using this money?
No, actually, there's not right at this point. I think this is money that I don't want to say we were surprised about. We kind of expected there was going to be some lawsuit money coming in, but not knowing the amount or dollar amount, we didn't make a plan to spend money that we didn't know what was going to be at. When we found out it was going to be 112,000, that's when we got talking about moving into a bigger place, possibly renovating, possibly buying something. That's kind of right now. We're developing that plan still as we're speaking. Unfortunately, we've been to a few different places already and found out that we are not as wanted as we thought we would be. There's folks that have package stores and CVS's and all inside of their shopping centers, and we were told that we weren't a good fit. So that's kind of throwing a little bit of a monkey wrench in our plan. There are other properties that kind of made us think about possibly buying. And again, the only reason we can make this jump in this leap off is knowing that we had this money coming in. And this year is guaranteed because you're able to vote on it. And next year's from, and I think we went through this in the council, technically we're going to have to come in front of everybody again because you can't award money you can't award future money that you don't have. That's how we understood it. But it also gives us a little bit of faith that if we go through unanimously with this council and this RTM, we think it's going to just give us a leg up for next year when we come in and walk in and talk about where the money's going to go to. And it does give us a way to actually make a business plan, because to make a business plan based on one lump sum of money, it'll be different than if we have two.
So, Joe, between now and the regular RTM meeting, is it possible that you could put together a document identifying specifically what you'll be spending this money on? I think your organization does great work, but I'm reticent to just hand a blank check to an organization that hasn't given us a plan as to what the money is going to be used for.
And I'd like to put you at ease, but I think still as we're developing it, and remind you also that although 112,000 again is a massive amount of money, if we're talking about individuals, we probably helped 400 people last year with families and people that are in addiction, the people that use our facilities. And really, when you really break down the 112,000, we spent this, and this is all basically funds that we get. The way we operate are donations. A lot of times when people pass away, people give money to Community Speaks Out. That's one of our bigger donors, which sadly is not something that we want to continue. But the place I work at my business, they give donations, and we usually get about 75 to 80,000 a year in donations and all the fundraising stuff that we do. And we spend about 55. I can bring what I want to do to the RTM is to bring our financials so you can see where the money's getting spent, what we're doing. We could not move to any spot. We could keep the office just as we have it and just offer more services to the people that have them. We actually reject some people at this point. Because there is the balance on how much you can spend. So right now we pay for just 2 weeks. We said, well, would that work out for 3 weeks? Because sometimes people didn't get the job right away. So there's other ways to spend the money. We don't have to do the office. I was excited about the office because I just thought everyone's going to love Community Speaks Out. They know who we are. We'll just walk into any place, and that hasn't been the case. So to give you a detailed business plan by the next meeting, I think would be difficult. But I would expect if you saw the financials, especially, I know there were some emails that went around that that mentioned that maybe Community Speak South has $13.1 million. I can assure you that we do not. And I think maybe it was $13.1 thousand, maybe what they saw. But if you look at our financial statement, and you can do this with any nonprofit, just go online, look up our 990s. Our whole entire board is listed. As far as they consider you an employee, somebody has to be, and it's all $0 next to the name. It's all 100% donation, and all that goes back, other than our rent, everything is going directly back into services.
But it's a non-profit.
To follow up on that, Joe, could you specifically identify what the services are that your organization does? Because I'm not 100% familiar.
Okay, but mostly it's been, we saw a gap where people were getting out of prison, getting out of rehab, and didn't have a place to live. So we kind of filled that gap by working with all of the sober homes in Groton, the London area. This, believe it or not, there's probably 40 that most folks don't know about. And when we'll get a call from people and say, hey, I can't pay my first 2 weeks rent. And you know, if you're a sober home, you're running a business at the same time. Sometimes they'd help them out, but a lot of times you get burned and you can't. So we stepped in and said, okay, if this person seems like they're doing the right thing, we'll pay the first 2 weeks. Now that can be anywhere from $300 to $500, depending on which home it is. So that's one individual for 2 weeks. And there have been times where they get in, and if you came out of prison, you don't have your driver's license, it's expired. So there's other things that you have to get in line before you get your job. So we'll say, okay, we'll give you another week. The most we've ever paid for somebody, I think, is like a month. That's our main service, I would say, probably 75% of our expenses. But we also started doing monthly karaoke for all these folks that are, because what the big problem we found was we sent all of our loved ones to all these different places around the country, and they come back and say, I can't live here. There's no recovery here. Like if you're in Utah or California or Florida, they have full-blown what you would think would be a bar if you walked into it and you'd ask for a drink and you couldn't get one. These are recovery centers where people, and especially like the 24 and 25-year-olds, they have nothing to do. So really, our budget now, we've been expanding and making sure that we do a bowling night. We rent the bowling alley for $1,600, one whole half. And we did, this will be our third one coming up this April 8th. If anybody wants to come and see how it works, we go in and they I'm talking to them, and it's, to me, it's almost emotional when you think about someone sees someone. I haven't seen you for a long time, Jill, in this community. If I haven't seen you in a long time, I would maybe think that you were dead. So when I heard someone say that, and oh my God, I saw that guy bowling, I thought he was dead. It's without having to sit at a meeting, without having, because these guys do go to separate meetings and from separate towns, but to just have this fellowship. I think a young man spoke at the council and mentioned the fellowship, and that's what we provide. It's hard to explain unless you see it, and I totally invite. It's Saturday this week. Is going to be our event. I'm like the free J. I DJ for free everywhere, but so we do karaoke with that as another event. And some people, some of the feedback we're getting is incredible. Like they didn't know that recovery could be fun. It's become a job for them to stay sober and go all these meetings. And somebody had never been to karaoke. I mean, I'm Filipino, so I didn't understand that. Like I thought everybody did karaoke. So we're enjoying it. And on the flip side, I think we're seeing some progress that we just by accident, I think, found that people just need other people.
You help connect people to treatment? We do.
Now, my wife probably spends, and this is no lie, probably 7 hours talking on the phone almost every single day. Saturday, Sunday, she's been on at night. We have residents in this town that I'm telling you, when you find out that your son or daughter is addicted, your life has changed and you live different and you think different and you act different. You do things that you wouldn't do or normally do. And they put themselves in sometimes dangerous positions, like buying drugs for their loved one. And I did it. I mean, when your kid is sick, you don't care. And what we try to tell them is to get off and not ride that roller coaster with their loved one. And we teach them. And I'm telling you, everyone thinks that I have this PhD, but it's, you know, I wasn't great in school, but I'm great at learning hard lessons. And the hard lesson we learned was, okay, my loved one was sick and we're going to figure this out. And that's really what our group is really about. We just transfer knowledge to parents. I wish our group was here when we first found out about my son. I wish that we walked into a room and got this kind of knowledge, because that's what we're really doing. It's more of a community.
Very good. Thank you for that, Joe. Now, I heard you say earlier this was kind of a surprise to you. So how did it come to be your organization? And maybe that's something that the town manager can answer to versus something for the police department or other permitted uses.
If I could just speak, I know the surprise to me was the amount, because the first year we knew it was coming and we knew it was going to be 18 years.
Okay.
We also knew that 15% only goes to municipalities, 85% is going to the state. So they have bigger fish to fry, and it's you know how the programs will run down.
Right.
But I didn't know it was going to be the 112. We figured it might be double, maybe 40,000. That's what I'm saying. We couldn't, like last year, we didn't get the 22,000 and have this feeling that it was going to be 112 this year. If we did, maybe that business plan we were talking about would be more framed. But no matter what, the 112 this year will allow us to start framing something. But without the money and the funds, it's just a dream. And again, without this money, I don't think we'd be talking about this move. I really don't. I think we're doing tremendous work in the lane that we're in, but this is going to change things. It really will.
And just to mention on the police, the only thing that's really come up in the past is Narcan. However, Legislate has a large grant, and we actually just put boxes out last week by Human Services in a library, and they're going to keep, Legislate's going to keep filling those up. So.
Okay. I think my final comment, and I'll leave the floor, is that, Joe, I support your organization. I think you're doing good work. But the legislator in me wants to see paperwork. So if you could provide to the RTM copies of your financials and maybe by them some sort of rough draft of what you're planning on spending the money on in written form, I would like to see that at the RTM. I'll vote to go out of committee, but without that information on the main meeting, I won't vote for it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll bring stuff with us, and our financials are online. Okay. So you can look at our 990, and it'll give you a breakdown of all the money we took in, where we spent it. It's pretty detailed. I actually had an email. It's in a Dropbox. I was going to share it with you before, but we'll make sure we get that to you, and you can share that with the RTM ahead of time.
That's great.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Representative Chase.
I just have a comment, because I work with grants in my day job, and somebody had mentioned at the town council, why aren't you giving other agencies a chance at this money instead of just giving it right to Community Speaks Out? And I'm saying that those other agencies get state and federal funding and whatever grants that they can find, and Community Speaks Out does not get any state or federal funding.
Okay.
Right. Oh, but
you had to apply for this, right? Like you put in that you needed these funds, right?
No, this is actually a lawsuit that was given to the town.
Got it.
And it's under
money no matter what.
Yeah, they get it no matter what, and they have
it's restricted to for treatment type of stuff. Yeah.
And again, I don't want to make it sound like that money is nothing, but to put it in perspective, one person going to treatment at Stonington is $30,000 a month. I mean, so the 112 again. John, I would share your concerns too if we were talking about 500,000, $1 million. We were talking about that kind of money. But when you see our financials and notice that we're raising 60, 70,000, we're spending 40,000 on this one solid part, like that, we know that we can expand. And of course, without you being involved with our group, you wouldn't know how much money we could spend. Right. We could freight train through that money if we opened it up. We get calls from all over the state, sometimes from around the country. We have helped people like from other states that were previously from here and couldn't get back. We've bought plane tickets to get them back here. And then because you got to have that support system.
You have to have a network.
And one was a couple of veterans that actually other veteran groups reached out and said, this person's stuck. And there's really, because veterans, the organizations do a lot, but they don't usually buy you a plane ticket. So we're that gap filler. There's our whole entire society is lined with government bureaucracies, and we're light and nimble, and we can do things where, last summer I got
nonprofit.
It's nonprofit.
Donations. I'm not gonna speak yet. Anybody else have a question? Emily,
I'm just
you
asking.
good? Al?
Are you tied in at all with, is AA tied into a program like this as well?
Oh, yeah, AA uses or NA uses our meeting space. And then there's Dharma Recovery uses our meeting space. We go to all these groups together. They've been reaching out more. SCAD was part of the karaoke. We did it together.
Yeah.
The interconnectivity that's been happening in the last probably 2 years is like been through the roof. I think a lot of it has to do with the legitimacy of our group.
Yeah.
We can bring 50, 60, 70 people. And I forgot to mention this, but at the council meeting, when we presented, we had about 65 people in that room, about 50 of them from Groton, 50 people that live in sober homes in Groton. So when if you want to somehow put a dollar amount, take that 112,000, divide it by like probably 800 people that we're helping. I can't really put the number completely on it of how many people, because there's one young man that's in a sober home now that we helped, and the parents are sleeping now. They're not missing work. They're able to wake up in the morning because they feel like their son or daughter is safe, or at least they know that they can't control it. Maybe it's something we taught them in combination with their kid doing a little bit better. But those are the things that I think we can't quantify. If I could tell you how much money we save just by heartache alone, by having mom and dad be able to wake up or go to sleep, because that's happening all through our town. I think most of us don't understand the kind of pressure that these people are under. They went the wrong route and spent every single dime in their retirement money on their kids' recovery. We have people that spend $300,000, mortgage their house. Their kids are 35 years old and they've been to 10 rehabs. That's real. And I think when we drive around town, we see someone in a nice house and we think they're all set. Like, oh, that guy worked at EB for 25, 30 years and they have that good house. Guess what? A lot of it is fake now. And they say, I wish I didn't spend my whole retirement. That's the parent connection we have. We've saved money for parents that walk in that normally, again, when your kid is sick, you would empty your bank account, everybody in this room. And unfortunately, we dealt with a lot of people that already did it. But then when you come to our meeting, the parents that already did it see you as a new parent say, don't do that. Even though it's your first instinct, don't do that. And that's real. That's a cost. That's a savings that I don't think we could ever. We can't quantify that either. We just know the anecdotes of the people that have nothing now.
How would you compare the fentanyl issue to alcoholism, which is bigger?
I don't think you can compare fentanyl to anything that we've seen on this planet yet. It's the most powerful drug mankind's ever seen. Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be one right behind it that's even more powerful. But I think we have to understand what that is. It's one of those, and I didn't believe in the don't do drugs, that thing, because I think the message was tough. But we're actually starting to think that we may have to do the one and done thing, because I think there's people now that are trying it that aren't addicts, that aren't addicted, that are recreationally trying it, and it's laced with fentanyl, and they're gone and dead. And the police are taking their phones and saying, because these kids understand fentanyl, and they say, is it just cocaine? If it's only cocaine, I'll buy it. And then, of course, it's only cocaine. Yeah, and it's pure fentanyl. There's just not a comparison. I think if we had these drugs in the 50s, when everyone says America was at its best time, and our kids and these drugs were available in the 50s, we'd have the same exact problem. It doesn't matter how good your country is or how good shape you think you're in. If your kids try fentanyl, or any of us in this room, and it hits you right, you got a problem.
Yeah. Well, you answered the question more or less by saying that fentanyl is actually a much worse problem than pure alcohol, because that's a different thing. But I can assure you that alcoholics have an extraordinary brutal life.
Oh, they do. No, listen, I'm not downplaying the alcoholism part, because all addiction is the same. Yeah. It's just I don't think there's been a point on our planet in a human race where you actually could be breathing 1 second and not the next. And that's how strong that cops have to handle it with gloves, because if they handle it wrong, you're talking about people who are physically fit, ready and able to work, never used drugs before. If it hits them wrong and goes in their mouth, they could be dead. That's how serious it is.
Yeah. Heroin is a terrible, terrible drug. I've got some family history with it in my family as well. A niece of mine died of an overdose. I mean, it's a terrible drug. It's an awful thing to try to kick. Almost impossible. I do have another family member who it has to take, I've forgotten the name of the medication, but it blocks them from being able to take it. But it's terrible stuff. I mean, there's no comparison to alcoholism, unfortunately. If you're hooked on heroin, it's a lifelong battle, worse than alcoholism, I think.
Yes, it is.
I don't know. I don't pick and choose which addiction is worse, because if you're addicted to it and you're not getting to work, it doesn't really matter. The scary part to me is the fentanyl is just because you think of us as young kids, we were willing to try things that we didn't really sure if we were going to be okay. Now we just had the idea of, you knew you weren't going to drink a beer and die. And then same with now, the pills that they get, they're just one step ahead of us all the time. They would look like it was a pill that was out of your cabinet that was made by Pfizer. You could not tell that they have pill presses, and they press them just right. So the actual engraving is the same exact depth. Because these kids that are doing the drugs, they don't want to die. And they look and say, no, that's exactly it. That's an Adderall. No, it's not. It's a pill that was made to look like it. So that there's an aggressive nature to this. And I couldn't understand at first why a drug dealer who your sole business is to sell to customers.
Want to kill your customer.
Because they used to announce when they were, just to put this in your mind for perspective, they used to announce on the news when 8, 10, 12 people overdosed in a city. And they kind of stopped. And I called him, Demas, and said, what? You guys need to tell right away. They said, no, we figured out. When we said there was a huge overdose problem in Groton that weekend, somebody from Waterbury would get in a car and drive to Groton to buy it, to buy the same drug. And I had two young kids, and I was at the kitchen table, and the mom and the son were 2 sons. They were both addicted. And I said, the older brother, I said, wouldn't you be mad? Like if your brother took drugs and bought it from this guy, wouldn't you want to go beat this guy up? And he said, you want me to be honest? I said, yeah, be honest. That's what we're here for. And he said, well, if I'm gonna be honest, I would go look for that guy. But I go look for that guy to buy drugs. I said, the guy that just killed your brother. And the mother's screaming and crying and calling him an idiot and an ass and everything else. And he said, Mom, I don't know who this guy is in my house. You brought him here. You asked me a question and I answered it. As disgusted as I am with myself right now, I answered it truthfully. That's when the switch went off in my head that it's not something we can beat out of our kids. It's not something we can just say, don't do it. It's bigger than that.
Do we have any further discussion?
No.
That's great. I'd like to call a vote.
Sorry.
Who's up? Who's got a hand up?
Attendee Matthew Brennan, do you remember?
No, he's not.
Okay.
You can't ask. Sorry, Matthew. Okay. We don't need a roll call. All those in favor, raise their hand. Aye.
Aye.
Representative Gardner.
Abstain.
Okay, so it's 5 and 1 abstention.
Motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Joe, good to see you.
Hey, you too, John. Thank you. And I'll bring more information to the RTM meeting when I see you guys.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll email it ahead of time. You'll have it. You guys